good vegan meals in Vegas, and then went out to St. George and Zion, and just got back to Vegas today, and we're flying out tomorrow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, Crystal, we can't hear you.
Is your right speaker? Okay, it looks like we're live.
Yeah.
Still can't hear you, though.
Yes?
Oh,
No?
okay.
You can hear me? Or no?
There you go.
A little?
Well,
No.
no,
I
can.
back.
That was my Instagram lagging.
Oh, okay. Hold on just a second. I'm just going to try to do this better.
Okay, and maybe there might be a way to watch this Spokane thing.
Oh, yeah. Your interview.
Yeah,
maybe we can show that
all the way out to Pullman.
Oh, that's nice. It would be nice if reporters tried to get the whole story and not just be sensationalist.
All right. Sorry about that, guys.
That's all right.
What do we
Lorraine was going to see if she could show the interview that she did today.
do it?
Yeah, I'm just seeing what I don't know, I can just kind of have it playing and they're just doing their news report, but when it goes to that topic, we can switch it over.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you can share your screen. So, yeah, how are you feeling?
This morning I was feeling really nervous, when I got asked to do a on-camera interview.
You're frozen now. Oh no. She's frozen.
Oh man.
Well,
oh no.
Now you're not frozen anymore.
This
okay,
is
great.
how to go.
Yeah, my internet was just doing funny things. But yeah, I had reached out to them because they had covered it, and the reporter in the Spokane newspaper who wrote the article that was published this morning had suggested I reach out to them. And I didn't know it would be for a video necessarily. So when they reached out and were like, we want to do a video, I initially said yes. And then I kind of had a panic. And then I said no. And then I took a shower, had a good cry. And then I called them back and said yes. And was like, okay, no, actually I can, there's nothing not worth sharing. There's nothing to hide here. So that's, yeah. So then they came
hard
out.
with a lot of pressure. It's
yeah.
Hard to take care of yourself.
Yes.
So. And maybe we can go through the stuff I didn't warn people about being a whistleblower. Like, you've entered the rarefied realm of being a whistleblower who got media attention. And whistleblowers are rare, and then whistleblowers who actually get media are rare. And what that's like and what you go through when you have that happen to you is something very few people understand. And it's like your identity is no longer your own. You are perceived in ways you can't control. And people spread misinformation and lies about you and who you are and your intentions. And there's nothing you can do about how people perceive you. And that's really hard. And it's really disappointing. Like I think the saddest part for me was people I knew who I thought they knew me, and then they're not perceiving me in the way that I am, that I perceive myself. And I realize, oh, these people are not people who know me and care about me, and they are more involved in this narrative than me as a person. I've become an object basically. And so yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard. You can't hold maybe conflicting concepts at the same time. And that I think that a lot of people just don't have, or we don't encourage a skill set for, to be like, I can love this person and care about this person and respect this person, and we can disagree on something. And so it seems like it has to be sort of an all or nothing. And that can be very hurtful and disappointing.
Yeah, I think the thing that's been weighing the most heavily is the way the school has framed this as what they were most concerned about is the attacks and the threats, and that is extremely concerning. And I think what I'm struggling with is feeling like I'm inadvertently getting blamed for those poor actors who are acting inappropriately, and that that wasn't my call to action, that wasn't my intention with this. I haven't really experienced anything in person or on campus. It's spring break for most of the vet school, so the only people that are still on campus right now are fourth year students. So I don't know what it'll be like kind of when the hustle and bustle comes back, but my day-to-day has been okay, and I've gotten a lot of support, actually, a lot of fellow fourth year students. I've had pre-veterinary students, I've had first year students, I've heard third year students all reach out and thank me for speaking up, because they also want to see WSU move away from involving terminal labs in surgical training, and to make sure that we are all able to have access to this training, and that it's not a barrier based on our ethical beliefs, and that the school can go forward being an institution that has a great reputation for training surgeons in small and large animal medicine. So I just kind of hold on to those things, and yeah, it's really helpful, and I really appreciate everyone who's reached out, because it's what makes it, in those moments of like, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? Like, this is blown up like way beyond anything that I can influence. It makes me know that I did the right thing in speaking out and bringing attention to this, and I can't control the people who are going to act inappropriately in these situations. And it's, not unique to this situation. This happens all the time. You can't control everyone's actions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to add Dr. Hannah Muller, who's also a former WSU student, to the stage. And I don't know, maybe even I should kick myself off and let you guys talk for a second.
Hi there.
Hey, well, I'd love to hear from both of you, because you both did this long before me. Maybe we can start chronologically. And Erin, if you want to share who you are and your involvement in conscientiously objecting to terminal labs at WSU, and then we'll move on to you, Hannah.
I think, I went to WSU vet school in the 1980s, and at that time there was a terminal cardiology lab that a lot of students objected to, and there was what we called our junior surgery, that involved a few terminal surgeries, and at that time you actually did 2 or 3 procedures on an animal and then euthanized them. And so you recovered the animal and did the aftercare, which is very important, a very important part of learning surgery and aftercare and healing and pain control and all that. Although being in the 1980s, it was not what it is today. Especially I think we've improved vastly on our post-operative pain control protocols since that time. But you also bonded with an animal for a couple of weeks and then sacrifice them. And so I did conscientiously object to that. A couple of other students and myself. Well, one student in my class and I, and then one student in the class behind us. So at that time, we ended up working with Dr. Carl White, who was in equine medicine, and we developed some protocols that actually helped to train our psychomotor skills that were not being employed at that time. It was just sort of you go in, but the whole program at that time was so inferior because it was like you did 4 procedures and you were lucky if you got to be the surgeon on one of them. And so then you were the assistant, and then you were on anesthesia, and then you were on the assistant to the anesthesia, And so it really, I think the program overall has come a long way, not just from eliminating the terminal labs on dogs and cats, but in the overall training, both with the mock-ups and the shelter outreach community service experiences. So, and at that time it was challenging. My classmate and I ended up graduating late. We did not graduate with our class. We didn't walk with our class. We didn't graduate until October because it took so long for the administration to actually agree to accommodate us and to work with us. And it took a long time to create that program, but that was okay with us. That was a sacrifice we were willing to make. And our classmates were not necessarily hostile or aggressive or rude to us one-on-one. And of course, our friends were like, hey, I'm not doing this, but I still care about you. You're still my friend. And, that kind of thing. Or I wish I had the courage to do this, but I just don't, it's a big thing to go up against institutions. And at that time, pretty much everyone, we basically walked into a room full of men, white men, to propose all this. And it was really quite the gauntlet to run through at that time. But some students did call for us to have a special designation on our diplomas that we didn't actually learn surgery. And, ironically, one of my externships, I did a ton of surgery. It's a practice I had worked at before, as a summer job. And he was like, hallelujah, you're pretty much a vet now. So let's dig in and let's do all these surgeries. And I think that's really how it needs to be. We need to learn from people who can give us all those tips and advice and work alongside experienced veterinarians. And a lot of stuff you learn all the basics. You learn your suture patterns, you learn hemostasis, you learn tissue handling. And then if you come upon a surgery, the first time I did a splenectomy, I'd never done a splenectomy before. I literally had my surgery book open. And if I had had the chance to do it with another vet before, that would be great. But, I had friends and colleagues and mentors that would, support and say, hey, you got this. And here's some tips and that sort of thing. And so if anything, we need to continue to strengthen these surgical training programs. But I don't think killing healthy animals or, sacrificing healthy animals, ending their lives is is necessary anymore. And, it used to be that you could go to the veterinary school because there were students working alongside doctors. And so it was a teaching hospital. You knew that you were going to be working with students, and it was less expensive. And, the cost of everything has gone up. I'm not going to comment on what WSU has to deal with the cost of everything. I'm sure that's a whole separate issue. But, it's really sad that so many animals go without care because of the cost of veterinary medicine. Yet we have students that need this experience. And it seems like there's got to be a way to work that out, and to have that as a possibility to get students more. I think we did not get nearly the surgical training that we should have back in the 80s, and it's much better now, and it needs to continue to be held to a very high standard.
Well, thanks for everything that you did and what you went through to show that there was a way to get this surgical experience and have your patient survive, because what you ended up creating for yourself and your friends who also conscientiously objected, that's now the standard at WSU. That's now every third-year student goes through their junior spay lab, and we partner with shelters, and we do months of preparation. We also have our first year principles of surgery course where we learn all of our patterns and we learn everything on models. And then, there's months of preparation before we actually spay the dog, or, a month and a half. And we do models, and we have to be able to verbalize every single step of the way before we do it. And then we're there under the guidance of experienced surgeons. We get to wake them up, and we get to know that they went on to happy homes and got adopted. I think actually the dog that I spayed was already someone's pet, and they were, getting it spayed through the program. Like, she already had a home, which made it easier for me because I totally would have adopted her.
We did great dogs. Or I actually was working with someone who wanted to adopt my surgery dog, and I got Christmas cards every year letting me know how Harper was doing and thank you for saving. And we were able to get shelter dogs and spay and neuter them, which was great. And we thought, why aren't we doing this? There's need out there. So and one thing I have to say is, at that time, I think it was just so unthinkable to not do these. That was how you had to learn. And so I'm hearing a lot of the same stuff, like, how are these people supposed to learn? Your horse isn't gonna, they're gonna do surgery for the first time on your horse, and that sort of thing. And I really hope we can dispel that notion that we're supporting putting inexperienced people on a complicated surgical case, or even a simple surgical case, that you're unprepared for. The key is to having better preparation, but things can shift and change, and they have, obviously, over the last 36 years since I went to, since I graduated. And so it just, because it's always been done that way, is just never a reason to continue to do something.
And I'd like to point out that you're both, in Erin's case, you're a mixed animal veterinarian, and Hannah, you're an equine vet, because I think a lot of the assumptions that get made is that, I'm just a small animal vet student. I don't know anything about the large animal world. I mean, the truth is, I always wanted to do mixed animal. My internship that I matched is 50% equine, 50% zoo. So I would have loved to have been able to take this course if it didn't have terminal labs, because this is the population of animals that I'm going to work with. And so, in case people are wondering what kind of vets you all are, if you want to share what you do now.
Yeah, I did. I did equine work for a long time, mostly specializing on equine dentistry because as a mom, I was able to work my schedule, around my kids and not take emergencies and things like that. I also did several years of mixed animal practice, emergency calls, multiple surgeries, orthopedic surgeries, intestinal anastomosis, cystotomies, GDVs. I mean, we just, back then we didn't have the option to refer, but that we did not have the social media pressure that vets have now. And I think that's a big part of it too. We've kind of lost our our bravery as vets because people are so litigious, and we have kind of these gold standards that are fantastic, but the spectrum of care is very broad, and it needs to be individualized for every client and what they can afford, and with the well-being of every patient taken into account. And so I guess I was really fortunate to be there at a time where it wasn't possible to refer that fracture to an orthopedic standpoint or a logistical standpoint, whatever. So we just, we pinned it and used cerclage wires and splints, and we did all that stuff. So I was really fortunate, and then I had equine practice for a long time, did relief work, and now I'm a veterinarian for a chimpanzee sanctuary, something I've done for about the last 10 years, and just love it, and am very fortunate to be able to do that. And then I do some relief work, corporate relief work, wellness clinics type thing on the side. So I've had a pretty varied career. And my classmate, who was originally more along the equine side of things, she has done tons of shelter medicine and is an absolute whiz at spay neuter. She's a fantastic surgeon. So again, myth that you need to do terminal labs to learn to be a good surgeon. So Hannah, tell us about yourself.
Yeah. I'm a 2004 graduate from vet school. I was technically OSU, but one of the last classes to have a combined program with WSU. So I was there for my second year and part of my third year. So our pony labs were back at OSU. And at the time, they were terminal labs. And I was able to get half of the class to opt into the alternative tract that me and two other students created as conscientious objectors, and we saved half of the ponies. And so that was a big deal, but really sad that the other half didn't get saved. I ended up adopting my pony, and he became the best pony for my daughter that I had later. And he lived a good long life, passed away just a couple of years ago, and was truly an amazing pony. I can't imagine him having been killed in this lab for the sake of education. And what we did differently than the other students was we did the check ligament desmotomy surgery on a cadaver, and that's a surgery where there's a tourniquet anyway. There's not hemostasis really to be dealing with. So it was we essentially could do the surgery and dissect the whole limb because it was a willed body cadaver. And then we did the tracheostomy also on a cadaver, and our classmates were actually really jealous of that because they did one tracheostomy incision, and that was all they could do. It was on a live animal. We were able to practice it multiple times on our cadaver neck. And so you can break down these specific procedures into willed body cadaver surgery for the techniques for the procedure, but then learn hemostasis on castrations or things that are necessary on animals that can be recovered. So we ended up opting out of the small animal surgery course at WSU. At OSU, it was all terminal, and instead going to shelters and wildlife centers, and got 10 times as much live animal surgery experience as our classmates. I mean, literally we got a better education because we went the alternative tract and we sought out that experience. And it's really disappointing that I think that it's a really important point. Not doing terminal surgeries is not taking surgical experience away from students. It's making it humane. They need more hands-on live animal. The point is not to take away hands-on live animal surgery. The point is to make it humane, and it can be. And when we don't make it humane, we reduce the human animal bond importance. There's studies on that. We reduce the level of empathy in these students before and after doing terminal surgeries. And that's what makes us good vets, is our empathy, our love for our patients, our willingness to go the extra mile and really care about each individual patient. So why would we care about this patient when we're just going to kill that one? It just doesn't make sense. And it's outrageous that this was still going on at all so many years later, and I was part of helping the change for the anesthesia labs at WSU. That was one of the things there that I did, was they were expecting us to anesthetize a dog in our lab, and then the next class group would come in and do the same thing. And after the third time, then the dog would go into pharmaceutical research and then be euthanized. And that's really traumatic for that poor dog that they would do that with. And I said, no, that's not okay. Why don't we do anesthesia on this dog and have a senior student come in and do the spay or the neuter, return it to the shelter more adoptable? And they said, okay, if you work out this program. So we did that for our cat and our dog. And then it sounds like that's what they're doing now, which is great, because there really is no reason to be doing terminal surgeries. It's a convenience thing. It's an old way of doing it. It's very outdated. Students not only need live animal hands-on surgery experience, but they need compassion, empathy. They need to not be traumatized by having to kill an animal that they've bonded with. That's crucial for being a vet. And really exciting to see that they're not going to do this terminal lab. So that's wonderful. We need to make sure the horses are going to be okay, and that moving forward the goats are spared as well. But there's better ways of doing it. It just takes time, legwork, coordination, which is not unreasonable to ask in this day and age. So
Yeah, I think there's a perception with some members of the public that some of these animals at WSU are like being treated horribly or something. And I hope that we can clear up that that's not the case. There are very high standards of how any of these animals are going to be treated. I'm not arguing that the animals are going to feel pain or suffering. But they're going to have their lives ended. I think they will be treated very kindly. And like I said, our concepts of pain management are so much better than they were 25, 30 years ago. And so I have no doubt that, I think someone made some comment about, being poked and prodded and tested on and things like that. That's not what's going on here. That is not what's going on. And so, we have to be able to think a little bit critically and rationally, and not let the kind of the radical people that are jumping to all these conclusions run the narrative either. We've got to give WSU the props for how are being done well, for what is being done well.
And it's really unfortunate that WSU turned the narrative to those few people that were threatening or whatnot, because that's not the real story here. Yes, people shouldn't be threatening. People shouldn't be doing that. That's all what we're asking for or condoning.
It's a different story. And so it shifts focus away from the work that was done up until that point. And I think it kind of makes it sound like, okay, so you're saying that you only change your policy when you're threatened? I mean, that's good. Yeah. Is it?
And
I mean,
hundreds of people called them
because of respectful dialogue and wanting to create a better program and listening to concerned stakeholders, veterinarians and veterinary students, and the general I mean, the general public's perception, is important here as well. It should be taken into account. Horse owners and those people that are going to be our clients, but we have to have transparency, and we have to have these genuine conversations. We can't be, I mean, obviously anybody who threatened any of the techs or the students or the staff at WSU, that is abhorrent, and it completely unacceptable. And I hope that those were reported. I mean, if someone's threatening someone with harm, that's a crime, and that should be reported and traced back. And I hope it is, because that is not the praxis that we support here.
No,
at all.
Unrelated to us. That is something
separate. It's an important story, but it's a separate story. And it is unfortunate.
This all started with veterinarians, and this all started with veterinarians. The first people to reach out to the school, were veterinarians, and they chose not to respond to our voices. But hundreds of vets reached out.
Yeah. They're not mentioning that. Why are they not mentioning that?
Yeah.
That's
very unfortunate. Very sad
that they're changing. It feels like the narrative is being twisted from what the real narrative at hand is. So it's really important for us to get the word out that this is coming from us vets, vet students, clients, equine people in the equine community that are like, what? Doing what? I mean, people are out. They hear that this is still going on, in this day and age. So there's no excuse for it. So,
I agree.
Well, thank you both for sharing your stories, and for being a sounding board to me. We have our multi-generation WSU conscientious objectors, and hopefully I'm the last generation that has to advocate for this issue. I do hope, they've said that they're discussing the goat labs, but they haven't made any commitments one way or the other. And I hope those discussions end up with deciding that, while they're in the process of revamping the equine portion, because they have committed to no longer source horses for this lab. And so they're going to, already be reaching out to the community to find alternative experience, that they decide that now's the time to do the same thing for the goats. And I'm so glad that you both shared your experiences, and Hannah especially saying how much more experience you got because you didn't do the terminal option. That's certainly been my experience. I felt like, knowing that I didn't want to do the terminal labs, I felt very motivated to go seek out other experience. And I have treated probably 50 different species and done over or near 50 different surgeries on 5 different species. And I haven't had to participate in these terminal labs to do that. And so it is very possible.
And you had hands on a chimp.
Exactly. I did, and I will again soon.
Yeah. And we don't know the fate of these USDA horses that were slated to come here yet, do we? We don't know anything about that.
No, because we don't know. So I will say that originally the USDA, so they've been doing this. I think it's like they're researching filaria, and so they've, over the course of however many years this study has been going on, they've also been breeding horses so that they have a constant supply for their study. And their study is coming to a close later this year, and they currently have 11 horses left. And 8 of those horses were planned to go to this lab. And originally, the remaining 3 were going to be euthanized. But in the behind-the-scenes discussion, before this blew up and became a public concern, the year-long conversations that I've been having about the adoption policies and encouraging them to really look into those and dive into the possibilities, as well as investigating the infectious disease status of all the horses, we found that there was no reason that those 3 horses not involved in the lab couldn't be adopted. And so long before this became public, someone in the dean's office had volunteered to adopt those 3 horses. So we know that the USDA and WSU is pro adopting out these animals as long as they're, they were just going to use them in the lab because they didn't want to compromise the student experience. But the remaining horses, they were more than happy to adopt out. And that, we didn't even have to put out a call to action for that. Someone just, volunteered. So I have high hopes that these horses will find their way to somewhere better. And I know, the people there don't want to see them unnecessarily killed.
Yeah, I'm sure that the people that at the USDA that are working with them want that too.
Yeah.
I mean, horses are amazing. You don't get to know them and then be like, yeah, never mind. I don't care what happens to you. I'm sure it's all hard on the people that were working on them as well, knowing that they would have their lives ended.
Yeah. It's going to be nice when we get confirmation that they get homes, and it'd be nice to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they did, again, before this kind of went viral, they did tell me they would let me know when those 3 horses were adopted. So I'm sure they'll be transparent about these as well once this has kind of died down. I know that, they're not probably trying to keep them hostage or anything like that. And so I do, want people to have faith in WSU and the USDA in doing the right thing, because they were already planning on it for the 3 horses who weren't going to be part of the lab.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I have faith that things will smooth over and work out well. It's just been some unfortunate bumps.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm with you.
But
thank you so much.
And all the work you're doing, and that's wonderful. Thank you, and nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. We'll have to all get together and celebrate, and maybe we can all go on a road trip and visit the horses wherever they end up.
Be great.
Really. All right.
Amazing. Thank you both.
Thank you. Take care, and we'll see you soon, Loria.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All righty. Well, so that was Dr. Erin Zamzow and Dr. Hannah Mueller, both former students of WSU and now veterinarians who, when they were students, objected to the terminal laboratories that at that point were required parts of their curriculum, and they are foundational in building the framework that WSU currently uses. So, fast forward from, the 80s, and in 2004, when Dr. Mueller was doing her advocacy, now WSU has the lab that I talked about, where we partner with shelters and we learn surgery through models and simulations, and then get to apply those skills and spay a dog. And now my dog is coming to visit, and we just have to work together to ensure that this same model that WSU is already proving to be effective can be applied to the large animal curriculum as well, to make sure that vets, no matter what species they want to work on, can provide the care that they need and not have to undergo moral distress and psychological harm along the way. This afternoon, or this evening, KXLY, one of the local stations in Spokane, Washington, aired an interview that I gave. They reached out to me and wanted to see if I would give an interview. And so I'm going to try to find that and see if we can watch it here together. There was also an article in the Spokane or the Spokesman Review, which is the Spokane-based paper, and maybe we can go through that article as well. I had a few points in that article that I wanted to clear up and clarify there. But yeah, give me just a moment and I will pull those things up. Maybe we'll start with the article since that was published this morning. Let me. Okay. While I'm waiting for the host of this meeting to come back and allow me to screen share, I'm gonna just go ahead and read this article from the Spokesman Review. It says the headline is "Pressure Campaign by Animal Rights Groups Along with Outside Threats Leads WSU to Abandon Terminal Surgery Lesson at Veterinary School." So a few of the points, I guess I can read this whole article and then go through some of the points. So, public pressure from animal rights groups and threats to the staff of Washington State University's College of Veterinary Medicine have prompted the school's leadership to abruptly end long-running surgery lessons that ended with euthanasia. The safety of our students, faculty, staff, and animals is our highest priority, Veterinary School Dean Dori Borgerson wrote in a statement announcing the decision. Given the nature of these threats and similar incidents that have occurred at other research universities, WSU has determined that we cannot safely proceed with the equine component of the surgery course this spring and will not move forward with bringing the 8 horses associated with the course to campus. So again, I just want to address anyone who has sent threats or been harassing the students, the school, faculty, staff. It's completely unacceptable, and it is drowning out the voices, the veterinary voices, the veterinary student voices who are bringing this issue to light, because ultimately this affects our profession, it affects our communities, it affects animals everywhere, and it affects veterinary students' education. And the way that we have wanted to go about this is to make sure that the conversation is professional. This is why I have been talking with the dean and the USDA for over a year in trying to get to the bottom of these policies. And I didn't go public with this earlier because I wanted to keep this discourse professional. So the surgeries in question are part of the university's large animal surgery course, an elective typically taken in a student's 3rd year. The horses involved were transferred from another study, while the university purchased the goats, according to school documentation. The horses were part of a USDA department, or a U.S. Department of Agriculture breeding herd in Idaho, according to an email with the dean published online by a WSU veterinary student who sparked the controversy. That would be me. And the way this email was published online would have been the original press release that our honor put out, where I was interviewed talking about this issue. And so that initial press release went out after I had tried to warn the 3rd year students, not even warn, but just give them information about the lab, just letting them know that the USDA policy that everyone thought, the USDA thought this, the dean thought this, the faculty thought this. They all thought that the horses in the study all had to be euthanized at the end of the study. And this was only true for animals that were carrying infectious disease and who would pose a public health risk. And so I because I know people like Dr. Zamzow and Dr. Mueller and countless other veterinarians who I've talked to over the last several years who either conscientiously objected to terminal labs or participated in terminal labs and then regretted it. I wanted to make sure the students in this lab had all the information that they could to make the choices that they wanted. And again, I will reiterate that I don't judge any of the students. I stand and I support any student who took this course and participated in terminal labs because they were not given another option to gain these surgical experiences at school. Sure, I have gone out to seek some of these surgical experiences in other ways, but that does take a lot of extra time, effort, resources. And so I don't blame any student who has taken these courses. And I just want to make sure that everyone can make those decisions based on all the accurate information. And when new information comes to light, I want to ensure that gets considered. So when I reached out to the third year students and shared the information that I had learned from the dean, who had gotten her information from multiple USDA meetings, that these horses in the lab were A, not infected, and B, could have been adopted had they not been used in the lab, I felt that was important information to share. So I did. I included a quote from the dean's email. And also in that email, she talked about where these horses were sourced, like they talk about in the article here. And the dean responded to all of the students in response to my email saying that my quote was incorrect and out of context. And that is what really prompted me to write the press release, because I felt like this was moving away from a pedagogical teaching and curriculum issue and moving into an institutional transparency issue. And I didn't want other students after me who are trying to advocate for change to also be publicly defamed. So I linked that email because that was what was being called into question in that original press release. So that's what they're citing here in the article. Nonprofit organizations, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and the Beagle Freedom Project, as well as social media creators and veterinarian Crystal Heath, through her nonprofit Our Honor, have launched large-scale campaigns calling on people to pressure WSU into sparing the 8 horses and around 50 goats by changing curriculum to no longer include terminal surgeries. So yes, all of these organizations have launched campaigns, and I think there's actually a couple other organizations who've launched campaigns that aren't listed here. But I want to be clear that the only campaign the only organization that I reached out to specifically was Our Honor. I have a multiple year relationship with Our Honor and Crystal Heath because in my first and second year at vet school, I felt very isolated and socially ostracized for my animal advocacy and for being a vegan veterinary student. And I was looking up community. So I literally typed in vegan veterinarian and I saw, Crystal's name popped up, and then I found Our Honor, and it's not centered around being vegan, but it is the way that I found my way into that community. And I don't think I would have been able to get through vet school in the same way had I not found Our Honor. Everyone we have online group chats, and I have the opportunity to connect with veterinarians and vet students across the world who are trying to advocate for improved practices around animals and who conscientiously object to and call into question issues that they have at their schools or at their practices. And it's been an amazing community. And so I did reach out to Our Honor, and we organized veterinarians and veterinary students to write a letter to the dean asking for them to switch from the use of terminal labs to something more effective, like Dr. Zamzow and Dr. Mueller described that they were able to do when they were students, and that we do in other parts of our curriculum. After that press release was published, then the Beagle Freedom Project reached out to me because they wanted to verify the sources and they wanted to launch their own campaign in support. And they launched a campaign that was also very much, based in like being respectful and professional. Like, they're run by lawyers. It's very similar to the way our honor is run, which is run by veterinarians, where we are licensed professionals that are advocating for animals, and we do it in a way that it tries to lead with our professionalism first. And then, PETA picked it up, and then that's kind of when it really blew up, because they probably have the most massive following out of all of these organizations. But I didn't talk to PETA personally, and I didn't reach out to them personally. But when they see an issue that needs to be solved, they put all of their resources towards it. Okay, so continuing on, a web page created by the California-based Beagle Freedom Project titled "Stop the Killing Lab" called on the public to contact WSU leadership about the issue and listed the contact info of more than a dozen administrators and professors. And so these are all publicly accessible emails. A lot of these emails were listed in the Iacocca protocol, and these were all people whose information was accessible through public records request, being a public institution. A PETA statement called the educational lab sickening, barbaric, and archaic. I think archaic is accurate here. Sickening and barbaric are pretty evocative words. I strongly disagree that these labs are barbaric. I do think they are archaic, and there are better ways. But like Dr. Zamzow said, the animals receive pain control, they receive, adequate anesthesia. And actually this year, the lab was originally, for the horses, it was intended to only take place over one anesthetic event, because the school was trying to improve their protocol and improve the animal welfare in these labs. So in years previous, including last year, the horses had multiple procedures done, and these procedures were done over multiple weeks and then ultimately ended in euthanasia. But this year, they actually planned on doing it all at one go for the sake of the horses. A post from Heath on Instagram showed a clip from a nearly 20-year-old YouTube series called Charlie the Unicorn, where a unicorn stomps up and down on another unicorn. Actual footage of Washington State University preparing horses for the third-year elective surgery lab, the title of Heath's post read. Okay, so I'm pretty sure this was posted on Crystal's personal account, not our honors official account. And it was intended to be satirical. If you're a millennial, you know about Charlie the Unicorn, and it's a satirical cartoon where two unicorns are deceiving and a person and trying to lead him into a magical place, and then end up stealing his kidneys. And if you think really hard about the way this story has gone, there has been a lot of deceit. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot to say on this, but the fact that they chose to write this, like, I understand why they chose to include this, but this was a satirical post, and this wasn't part of like our honors official statement. This was someone calling out the absurdity of the situation in a satirical and comedic way. The university said the decisions to end the equine portion comes as it was working towards doing away with starting the next academic school year. And years after veterinary student Larea Cottingham, now in her 4th year, first raised concerns about the practice. So again, before this went public, the school had decided to move away from the lab. And I don't know if any of my work had to do with that, just because they had to increase their communication with the USDA and they learned that the study was coming to an end and then realized, oh, we have to decide, are we going to get more horses or are we going to have to transition the course away from that? And I do remember having a in-person conversation with the dean about that, where she found out that the study was coming to a close and that she was against the school buying more animals to be used in this way. Cottingham said the conversation was intended to be a professional discussion of best practices. She did not expect the online fervor and emotional outrage to take center stage. And that is super true. Anyone who knows me knows that I, up until this point, was extremely offline. I don't think I had logged into Instagram since March of last year. And like, I basically only have a Facebook for like Facebook groups that, you know, I need for various things. And until this started, I had been really offline. And so I think I was pretty naive to the way social media amplifies things and the power of social media, and what gets people interested in a story or not. Because I had tried to submit several op-eds. I submitted one to our local paper here in Pullman. I submitted one to the Seattle Times, and no one was really interested in my non-emotional op-eds. And so it really wasn't until it was evoking emotion in people that people started to care about this issue. What gets people riled up is the animals, and people don't really want to have nuanced discussions about the nitty-gritty of the best way to train surgeons and community outreach and all those things, Cottingham said. They're not as emotionally evocative. Cottingham completed her first few years of veterinary school at Utah State University and came to WSU as part of a partnership between the two schools. She found herself drawn to surgical practice, she said. And this part's actually a little bit incorrect. After working in clinics in the Salt Lake area where she was assisted in spay and neuter procedures on small animals. So I was interested in surgery, which is what made me want to go learn spay and neuter procedures at the Utah Humane in Murray, Utah, in the Salt Lake area. So my interest in surgery is what drove me to seek out that additional training. She first learned about the terminal labs while touring the campus ahead of her move to Pullman. I was really surprised to learn that in that moment that WSU still did terminal labs, because it's kind of one of those things that a lot of students know about as being this thing that happened in the past. Wow. Apparently my quotes are not very good, don't have very good syntax. Anyway, Cottingham said, in the past, vet schools would have dogs and students would operate on their dogs multiple times over the course of several weeks, and then they euthanized them with the last procedure. So again, that's what our lovely vets that were on earlier were saying that they experienced and were objecting to. Students in terminal labs tend to do multiple surgeries on an animal, with the final operation finishing with euthanasia. While small animal labs are increasingly things of the past, large animals tended not to be part of prior industry conversations. And I want to add in the state of Washington, there's actually a law called the Home for Animals Heroes Act. And the Beagle Freedom Project was actually involved in passing this law, which I think is one of the reasons they were interested in working with me on this campaign, is because this Homes for Animal Heroes Act actually requires, sorry, that's my dog, institutions and research facilities to the best of their ability adopt out dogs and cats used in research. And unfortunately, this law does not extend to other animals. It's only for dogs and cats. But that's That's how unaccepted doing terminal labs on dogs and cats is that in the state of Washington, there's actually a law prohibiting it. It's, it's not explicitly for terminal labs, but if you did terminal labs on these animals, it would go against what this act is trying to promote, which is not, wasting animal life and using trying to find ways to ensure these animals can go on and live happy lives after they've been involved in research. I think we should treat all animals with the same moral consideration, regardless if they're someone's pet or they're an animal in a shelter or they're wildlife or they're going to be used for food or clothing, Cottingham said. That animal doesn't know what its perceived use is, and so they deserve the same dignity and moral consideration as any other animal. Exactly. I wish the Homes for Animal Heroes Act actually encompassed all research animals. Use of any animal for research or education must be in accordance with federal guidelines on animal welfare. Research labs have an institutional animal care and use committee, or IACUC, in place tasked with reviewing each case and administrating those federal policies. WSU's practices were reviewed and approved by the school's board, and Borgerson said they are in accordance with the Animal Welfare Act, USDA policies, and the American Veterinary Medical Association guidelines. So I want to point out, I think a lot of these issues could be avoided if IACUC, or institutional animal care and use committees, had a more thorough and intense review of laboratory protocols. So, for example, the animal subject approval form, or the IACUC form for this course, requires the course directors to justify why these animals were used. And a justification was made for the goats, but in this protocol, there actually wasn't a clear justification for the horses. And I'll read you the justification from the IACUC protocol. And if I had control over this live stream, then I would show it to you here. But let me find this, and I can show you why I think this protocol shouldn't have been approved in the first place. And this could have saved the school and the students and these animals a lot of headache, because if they had reviewed this more closely. So the IACUC, it says, please provide a statement to address the potential harm to the animals on this study, e.g. pain, distress, morbidity, mortality, relative to the benefit to be gained by this study. And here's the justification that the course directors have provided. This course provides invaluable surgical experience for future veterinarians. The animal used in this course are purchased from animals that would have been sent to slaughter. This course uses these animals in terminal surgeries under general anesthesia with significant analgesic drugs provided to ensure that the distress to the animals is minimal. The animals utilized in this course are treated with great respect, as opposed to the slaughterhouse they were destined to end in. Every effort is made to reduce or eliminate any discomfort associated with handling, restraint, and surgical procedures. This lab provides students with huge value, from animal handling, client communication, surgical preparation, to the actual surgical procedure. The gain in student confidence regarding their surgical skills and ability is immeasurable. Having the opportunity to do a challenging surgical procedure with safety net that this lab provides allows students to grow more than most courses. So here are some of the issues I have with this justification. It says the animals used in this course are purchased from animals that would have been sent to slaughter. That is true for the goats, but it doesn't mention anywhere where these horses came from in this sentence. Later on in the protocol, there's a single line that says source, donation / sale / transfer, USDA, talking about the horses. And there is no written out paragraph form justification for using the horses specifically in this protocol. And if someone on the IACUC committee had caught this and been like, hey, are the horses going to be sent to slaughter? Because I don't disagree. The goats, they probably had a much more humane ending than they would have had they gone to a slaughterhouse. the horses were never going to go to a slaughterhouse. So I don't think this justification is valid here. Now, it sounds like the school went back and reviewed the IACUC protocol, and I think that is a big issue. And we need to be asking, how are these IACUC protocols reviewed, and what really are the requirements and the scrutiny that are used to review them? Because to me, I'm just seeing some inconsistencies and lack of information here. Okay, so back to the article. In justifying the scientific and educational value of the surgeries to the committee, professor and study lead Kelly Farnsworth wrote that alternatives like simulations do not offer the hands-on experience that live animals do. And I agree. And I think this is the biggest misconception that people are having. We're not saying don't do surgery on live animals and only do simulations. What the justification here is, they didn't look at other alternatives for getting live animal use. And the review in the IACUC protocol that shows why these labs are needed basically only talks about that live tissue handling is better than simulations. And they don't talk about saying that they investigated ways to get students into the community and providing services, and that they didn't work or something like that. So I think there's just kind of some tunnel vision going on here, and unwillingness to think outside the box a little bit to find students this surgical experience on live animals that need these procedures. The students get the basics down in alternative procedures on dummies or simulations in their early courses over the first 2 years, he said. And that's true. We have a state-of-the-art simulation lab. I think it's like accredited by the same body that accredits human simulation labs for human medicine. Like it's really effective. And it gets you to a point where you can comfortably then go on to do live animal surgery. So I think they really are preparing students really well to be able to go out and effectively help community and not be putting those animals in harm's way by having students work on them. I think students really are prepared well to take that next step. Live animal surgical procedures provide students the opportunity to apply those basic skills to realistic clinical situations and develop advanced skills needed to perform surgery in the future. I agree. And I think we can get these live animal surgical procedures through other ways without having to kill the animals at the end. He added the practice provides invaluable surgical experience for future veterinarians, and that animals are treated with great respect, and every effort is made to reduce or eliminate any discomfort during the staging process and later surgical procedures. To develop the manual skills needed to perform surgery, students must do surgery. Yep. This class is designed to train students in surgical techniques on live tissue that cannot be replicated in other ways, except what live tissue you choose to do these surgeries on. Do they have to be done on animals that are going to be killed, or can it be done on animals that you're actually helping? Cottingham said she first broached the topic of ending terminal labs altogether with the university leadership in 2024. She was elected the curriculum representative for her class and started by sending out a veterinary college-wide survey in which she asked students whether they were aware of the elective, their thoughts on terminal labs, and the ethics at play. And this is true. And what I had told the reporter here that he left out is I did not nominate myself for this position. When I was voting, like everyone else was voting on class positions, I saw that my name was nominated. And I'm assuming that a classmate did that because I have a master's in teaching. I have a master's in teaching science specifically. I've taught high school, I've taught middle school, I've helped start a middle school that has now become a middle and high school, and I've taught college biology courses as well. And I know a lot about curriculum development, and I'm very passionate about curriculum, pedagogy, effective scaffolding, and appropriate progressions to advance skills in all different types of teaching. And so, it's kind of coincidental, I guess, that I ended up in this position that I didn't really ask to be in. asked to be the curriculum committee. I was actually trying to be like, I'm going to take a step back and not be the teacher girl. But that was kind of thrust upon me, and I decided to do what I could with that. So I did send out this email, and like the article says, she received a lot of backlash from her peers, Cottingham said, but the school's curriculum committee was receptive. And that's true. She opted not to take the course herself, instead reaching out to Borgeson to continue the discussion around alternatives as she continued her studies. Yeah, and this sentence is a little confusing. So yeah, when I did my tour my second year and learned that there were terminal labs, I was super bummed, not only for the animals, but I also was really excited to take that course because we were just at that point where we were starting to talk about what third year electives we wanted to take. And I was intent on taking this course until I found out that there were terminal labs. And in retrospect, I really do wish I still had taken the course and had found ways to get that experience like, Dr. Zamzow and Dr. Mueller did when they created alternative programs for themselves. But because it's not a required course, it was a lot simpler just to conscientiously object and not take the course. But I did reach out to the dean to talk about not alternatives for me specifically, but just alternatives in the curriculum, and kind of start the conversation about this community-based, service-based approach. And I think I had also really talked about wanting to know more details about the adoptability of these animals. That's always been my strategy, and my desire was for everything to be very professional, very by the book, Cottingham said. Yeah, I've been working on this issue for years, and I've been doing it on my own and silently, haven't gone public, haven't posted about it on social media until just now. Her talking about my relationship with the dean was fine until Cottingham took portions of their communications and emailed them to the class below her earlier this year, she said. Cottingham said she wanted to notify them of the procedures and her belief the animals could be adopted instead of operated on. So here's where I have a little issue with the way this is characterized. So yes, I did. When the dean told me that these horses were adoptable and were not infected, and the only reason they weren't able to be adopted now was because they were going to be used in these courses, or in this course, and be euthanized at the end, was when I found that out, I asked her if she was going to tell the students or if the course directors were going to tell the students, because I felt like it was a very different kind of calculus ethically to participate in this course. I'm just trying to put myself in these students' shoes and try to think about, okay, maybe I don't like that they use terminal labs, but these animals were going to be euthanized anyway. Do I feel more okay with that than doing these procedures and euthanizing animals that didn't need to be euthanized? I just imagined if I was in the course and I had gone through the reasoning and had made peace with the fact that these animals were going to be euthanized, regardless if I took the course or not, and decided that it was worth learning from them. It felt like a totally different decision to then do terminal labs on animals that could be adopted. And so I felt like the students deserved to have this information to make these decisions, because I've talked with vets who did terminal labs and they really regretted it. And I didn't want my peers to have to go through that. And this was really coming from a place of empathy for the students and wanting to decrease the amount of moral distress that they may have been experiencing. And maybe there were some students who were fine with it no matter what, because they saw the educational value in it as being, greater than the sacrifice of this animal's life. I don't know what everyone's decisions were, but I just wanted to make sure everyone was okay with it because they had all the information. So I sent the third years an email And I quoted the dean in that email, quoting her email that she had said that these animals were adoptable. And she replied all and said that I was like speaking out of context and that my quote was incorrect, even though it was directly copied from her email. And so this is where I have some issues with the way that it was characterized in this article, because it says, and her beliefs, the animals could be adopted. It's not my belief. It was this was fact that came directly from the dean. I wouldn't have emailed the students had I not had concrete evidence of this coming from the most official source possible. She said the dean replied all, telling the cohort of students the bits of their conversation were taken out of context. She not only said that they were taken out of context, she also said that they were incorrect. So basically defaming my credibility and, without saying it in those words, insinuating that I was lying. And so I just feel like this article took bits of their conversation, were taken out of context. It's like, this is the only context that they were in. So that's when I decided to reach out and to submit a press release, because I felt that it was wrong to publicly defame a student for asking questions, for going through the right communication channels, for being quiet, respectful, speaking one-on-one with the dean in person, over email. Like, I don't know what way I could have done this better. And the outcome was still, when I voiced the information I had learned publicly to the students who it concerned, I was then in front of all those students over email, basically told that I'm spreading false information and not sharing information accurately. Cottingham has felt ostracized since, which led her to reach out to Heath, whose organization aims to support veterinarians and veterinary students critical of current practices from bullying, while also advocating for animal welfare. And exactly, there was a reply all from one of the third-year students where she said she felt unsafe engaging in discussion with me and left me off the email. And then I've been sent private messages in group chats with students, and I'm not going to share the details of them because, they're private. You can't access those through public records requests. My whole thing here is I am only sharing information that you can access through public records requests, and I'm not telling other people's secrets. But the tone of those messages was basically warning students from engaging in discussing conversations with me. And so, yes, of course, I felt ostracized, and I felt like, people were treating me like I was a dangerous terrorist. And all I was doing was sharing information that the dean had said to these students so they could make an informed decision. This campaign originally started because veterinarians were trying to get them to turn to more effective methods, Heath said. We had to bring in more animal rights orgs to get them to take urgent action. And I think by we, meaning our honor, and like I said, Beagle Freedom Project reached out to me, and we kind of worked on the campaign so that they made sure they were characterizing everything accurately. Heath is doubtful the school received threats as a result of her and fellow animal rights organizations' campaigns, but added she does not condone any sort of violent rhetoric. The entire situation should not be used to stifle the free speech of students at the university. And I don't think Crystal is actually doubtful that there were threats, but I think she is calling into question like the severity and like the amount. And I don't know, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but wants some verification from the school that action has been taken on the behalf of people who have received these threats to hold the people who made them accountable. And right now the school hasn't made any statement saying that they are working with police or, investigators or anything like that to hold these people legally accountable. She goes on to say, I've certainly received threats too for my advocacy. I've been ostracized. Heath says, I would love to see what some of the threats are. We are disappointed the school was able to use that as an excuse. Heath and Cottingham said their advocacy should not be viewed as taking an educational opportunity away from students. They would prefer alternatives like partnerships with local ranchers to provide similar experience on animals in need of care. Instead of trying to end surgical experience, I just want the surgical experience to be real and helping animals in need, Cottingham said. I don't want this course to end. I want it to be better and more useful for everybody. And I think that's the message that's getting lost here. I'm not trying to take away anyone's surgical experience. I wanted that surgical experience too, and I could not take that course because of my ethical beliefs. And I was denied the opportunity to learn that surgical experience that the course offers. I would have loved to learn those procedures, but I will and have had to continue to find other ways to get that opportunity because I wasn't able to access it at school. And I want students to be able to get as much experience at school as they can without having to choose between their conscience and their ethics and their education. The students currently in the lab will be given full credit for the work they've already completed. The university statement reads, the equine portion of the course were to end at the end of the semester anyway, and moving forward, students will gain essential surgical experience through clinical training opportunities and advanced simulation technologies that reflect evolving practices. So here's the proof that the school is already admitting that there are more modern ways to get students surgical training through advanced simulation and through clinical training. And so, they're admitting that what we're asking for is not only is it not unreasonable, it's actually the standard now, and that they're working towards moving towards that standard. WSU spokeswoman Pam Scott declined in an email to share information about what would become of horses slated for the lab. The email also did not disclose what happened to the goats. So the dean did send an email to the students saying that the goat part of the lab was completed, which based on the Iacocca protocol, completion means all the goats were killed at the end of their procedures. Heath said her organization is trying to ensure the horses end up at a sanctuary. Our work still isn't over, she said. Cottingham said she was encouraged by the university's curriculum changes underway before the public outcry rattled the college. She's worried about the students currently in the class being shortchanged without an alternative in place for equine surgeries and what the fallout may be among her peers for her advocacy. Definitely both of those. I'm so bummed for the students this year because the school didn't have those systems in place for them to learn in the way that they're saying they're going to do it next year for these students. So they took away that opportunity without, they're just saying, we're going to just give you full credit, but they're not, or they haven't at least publicly said that they're working to get the students the equivalent surgical training. And I think that's such a disservice to these students who were excited to learn these skills, who really wanted this surgical experience. And now they're not getting either. Now they're not getting the surgical experience through the terminal labs, and they're also not getting the surgical experience through the advanced simulation and clinical opportunities that the school is creating for next year. So I'm pretty upset the way that this has gone down for the sake of those students, because I wish the school, we've been in this conversation for over a year for months, and they could have put these plans in place earlier instead of just making it so that the students have to face the consequences, myself included. Because the consequences I'm going to face are the social consequences of being blamed for all of this. And yeah, that's not really fair either. Heath said her organization is trying to ensure the horses end up at a sanctuary. Like I said earlier in the live stream, I think WSU and the USDA, they've shown they want to let these horses be adopted. I don't have any updates on that, and I think it will happen, and we'll update folks once it happens. But I think that they will act in good faith here, because they've already shown that they're willing to let horses be adopted. Cottingham said she still was encouraged by the university's curriculum changes underway before the okay, I already read that. I'm glad people are talking about it, but I just hope that people can kind of cut through the emotion and hear the reason behind it and the evidence and logic behind it, Cottingham said. And no, this has been going on for a really long time, and I've been working solo on this with administrators for a long time, just trying to do everything, quote unquote, the right way. So that's the end of the article. Welcome back, Crystal.
Hi.
I just went through the entire article published in the Spokesman Review, and
awesome.
Yeah, probably talked about it for maybe 40 minutes, and I read it and just kind of went through the points that I felt like needed to be clarified.
Okay. Awesome. So, well, I don't know. I can talk about why was my little meme that I made on my own personal Instagram used for that. And
yeah, I did address that. I did say, I was like, this was posted on Crystal's personal Instagram. This was not associated with our honor. I mean, I guess, you're a public person now. You're not allowed to have a personal life or a personal.
I'm not allowed to have a personality.
No. Nope.
And I was like, haha, but the way he describes Charlie the unicorn and the plot is highly inaccurate. The plot is not that Charlie is being beaten by these two other unicorns. It's that Charlie is being manipulated and coerced into going to Candy Mountain against his will, but he kind of goes along with it, even though he doesn't want to. And then he gets his kidney stolen.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it. You brought it back up, because I think I forgot that Charlie itself was a unicorn, and I was like, was it unicorns and like a man, and they were trying to trick the man into Candy Mountain? But yeah, we're
yeah.
I didn't go into it too much, other than it was I don't know.
If anybody brings that up as a way to criticize me, I have so many things to say. Oh, you're going to clutch your pearls at the fact that I said that. And if you're more offended by my Charlie the unicorn meme than you are about horses being killed for terminal labs, I don't know what to tell you. Your priorities are different than mine, but that is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not meant to run a nonprofit. Somebody else take this over so I can just write comedy for Saturday Night Live. That's my dream. I don't want to be a stand-up comedian. I just want to be a comedy writer.
Amazing.
I think, and then have a bunch of other writers say, we're not going to use that.
Not that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what a time, man. Yeah.
Did we ever get to see your interview?
No, I wanted to see if I can pull it up. I keep struggling with finding the getting the order of the letters. So I was going to see if I could find that that clip specifically.
Yeah, I was having
it
trouble
already
finding it
aired.
too earlier when I was trying to. And also, hold on just a second. I'm trying to manage multiple social justice movements at once, which is why I was gone for half an hour.
No worries. Yeah, so stay tuned if we're able to find this if we're able to find this broadcast, then we will show it, because I gave an interview today and I want to see what they said and how they clipped me.
Yeah. In the meantime, I can potentially bring up the Facebook page of the WSU articles here. WSU Euthanasia Lab. Let's see what people are commenting about it.
Oh, I think I can find it here.
Okay, so this is the article on Facebook, and let's see what the comments are here. We have what happened to the goats. Unfortunately, the goats were used in the lab and had their lives ended. And this comment, I find it very hard to imagine that an accredited state school that has an awesome reputation like WSU would do anything to harm an animal. I find that very, very hard to believe. I'm sure those animals were serving a purpose for those veterinarians.
Well, they were serving a purpose, but that doesn't.
Somebody needs to read The Occasional Human Sacrifice, because literally people go through, you need to understand, everybody needs to understand where the worst atrocities occur, and they occur in respective institutions and in respected organizations. The Willowbrook Institute. And I was just looking up who was the guy who was the
the pediatrics.
what actually, I want to go through all of the things that happened at the Willowbrook, because it's so juicy. Let's see if I can find it here. Let me look this up. So the Willowbrook Institute, this is a place in Staten Island, New York, the Willowbrook State School, and from 1950s through the early 1970s, children with intellectual disabilities were housed here and used in hepatitis experiments. I'm going to remove this field here. Researchers, Sal Krugman, intentionally infected children with hepatitis to study the disease and test potential treatments. And a lot of parents were absolutely, like, they had a child with some deficits and working couldn't take care of them, and respected the Willowbrook, but it had a long waiting list. And in order to get around the waiting list, they can enroll their children in this hepatitis study. And so, and why did they think that this was a good idea? Well, the Willowbrook was such a gross institution that it was a given that if your child was going to go there, they were going to get hepatitis, because these children with mental cognitive difficulties, of course, they're going to touch things that are gross. They're going to eat their own feces. And that's just kind of the nature of this work. But it's also, this place was very, 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 very unhygienic. And these are highly vulnerable children, no ability to consent. And the parents were not really given informed consent. and they were coerced because they were kind of desperate to find a place for their children. And so they felt compelled to enter them into the study. And so that's what happened. There was no direct benefit to many of the participants. They were kind of told like, oh, they'll get better housing if they are enrolled in this study too, which is kind of problematic. So RFK was one of the people who kind of raised concerns about this, toured the facility in 1965 and publicly condemned the conditions there. Geraldo Rivera then in 1972 televised his own investigation. And then Donna Stone was another one who entered the facility and reported on the conditions. So Saul Krugman, during all of this, received major honors, including the Lasker Award and the Robert Koch Prize for his hepatitis research. I wonder if Robert Koch is the Koch brothers. I'll have to look that up too.
I don't know.
And then who were the physicians? Hold on.
I did find I'm almost to the part in the news where they talk about
Okay.
this.
Do you want to play
yeah,
that?
here we go.
Oh.
Yeah.
You want to add it to the stage here?
Yeah.
I wonder if we hope we can hear it. Well, can you
down a class that teaches
Cool.
future veterinarians how to perform surgery on animals like horses and goats. This is 4 News Now at 5.
Maybe then they're going to do this for a minute. Maybe
all day. 59 in Spokane. It's 58 degrees in Coeur d'Alene. This time yesterday, there was all kinds of...
Yeah, you wouldn't like it today.
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay, hold on.
4 News Now delivers, not just in the newsroom, but in the community. We're doing the work. Listen.
It is 85 degrees here right now.
They'll take on the Tennessee.
Let me find this again, because I know that they... I guess right there they were just advertising that they're going to talk about it. Let me see if I can scrub through a little.
Well, Geraldo Rivera won a Peabody Award for his investigative reporting.
Oh.
Let me see. Is that...
Oh, okay.
Coke. Oh.
Decision to end the program coming up tonight at 6:30.
Oh my God.
Our sports coverage tonight doesn't end with the Sounders.
Yeah, the Gonzaga men are in Portland.
It's 6:30 now.
Oh, well, perfect. So maybe we're just about to get it. So maybe we're just 7 minutes.
Maybe you can see it live. The Robert Koch Prize is named after Robert Koch, the 19th century German scientist who is considered one of the founders of modern bacteriology. And the prize is awarded by the Robert Koch Foundation. The Koch brothers, Charles Koch and David Koch, were the U.S. industrialists associated with Koch Industries. Are there any relation? I don't think so.
We're back, baby.
Okay, well, almost there. I think it's after this. I think it's the next thing.
This commercial break.
Yeah. Be right back with you after these commercials.
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, I just had fun. So I've had like little parties here at my building before and nobody really cared. And I kind of agreed to like, how is this labor meeting, union meeting thing? And I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. And it turned out to be 7 cars full of people.
Oh my gosh.
Coming into our screening room. And there was a fire alarm situation where the sprinkler like broke or something, or somebody hit it. And so that flooded the area where they were all going to be.
Oh no.
And so for some reason, the air conditioning is also off there. I don't know if they're trying to dry it out or whatever. And they moved all the furniture. so now we have like this movie theater in my building too. So they all packed into there, which is actually the perfect setup for what they're doing. But there was one person in the movie theater and who wouldn't leave, I guess.
Oh.
So yeah, but I'm happy to be part of history, which what they're doing will be in the news pretty soon too.
Amazing.
More news now at 6:30.
All right.
Washington State University has made changes
Woohoo.
to one of its veterinary courses after
Now I'm
receiving
gonna have to
threatening
watch
messages
myself.
sent to
There you
students
go.
and staff.
It's the large animal surgery course, which is now facing public scrutiny for a component of the class that involves euthanizing horses. Madeline Mullen spoke to one
And
of the
goats.
students who's been advocating for these changes and shares why this course is receiving so much backlash.
In this third-year elective class, students gain experience by performing procedures on live goats and horses, animals that are ultimately euthanized at the end of the course.
Not
The
euthanized. We
school
need to.
uses animals that would
I
be
know,
killed
and
otherwise.
I say euthanized in my because I don't know.
Because that's the
I didn't
lingo
want
people
to
understand. I get it.
I didn't want to get in trouble saying kill on.
End their lives, or it's a good. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
But
killing.
this
God, yeah.
semester, fourth-year veterinary student Larea Cottingham
she got-
says she learned that wasn't the case for several horses.
They were not infected with disease, and had they not been part of the terminal lab, that they could have been eligible for adoption under the USDA policy.
In emails Cottingham shared with us, this information was confirmed with the dean of the veterinary school. The dean also mentioning that had they known in time, the class could have been altered and the horses could have.
Yo, they knew in time, and the only reason they didn't know in time was because they drug their feet for
Yeah.
a year. I first asked if last year's horses could be adopted, and you bet I am kicking myself for not being
Same.
here earlier, because if we could have saved last year's 8 horses, and I'm just like, wow, what a failure on my part for not
My
being-
part too. And now we know. And now anybody listening, we have a strategy now,
And,
but
yeah,
we didn't before.
because they told me last year it's against USDA policy. These horses are infected. And I do want to give credit. That may have been true. Those horses may have been infected and ineligible for adoption, but we'll never know unless they fulfill our public records requests.
Been adopted.
It's just a different moral consideration on how to use an animal if they were going to be killed anyway, versus they could have gone on to live a life somewhere as someone's pet.
While WSU
Can you pause it for a second? Where are you, and why are there so many dogs barking?
In my backyard, because we didn't
and it's
really
your dogs?
have. No, it's my neighbor's dogs. Yeah, didn't know where else to go. I was like, well, I can't go to campus and do this. And I just want to say, I knew they would probably clip that part. I don't think it is a different moral consideration whether animals were going to be euthanized anyway or going to be slaughtered and used for food anyway versus they're a beloved companion type animal. I just want to make that clear. I was just in that clip, I was describing why I chose to whistleblow and tell the students is because I felt that as a student, I was putting myself in the shoes of the students. I may feel differently about killing an animal that needs. I mean, as vets, we all euthanize animals because it is the humane thing to do when these animals are suffering. And so in that way, veterinary medicine is very different from human medicine, is that ultimately becomes a part of our medical decision making. But this is not that. This is either animals who were going to be slaughtered for food, which I don't think is a good enough excuse to kill an animal, or animals who are going to be killed because they were used in infectious disease research. Also, I don't think is an appropriate way to use animals. But I'm just imagining like the average student who maybe eats meat and doesn't feel those ways about these things. I could imagine feeling very differently about killing an animal that the school purchased before it went to slaughter versus killing an animal that could have been adopted, and the only reason that they're being killed is for my education.
Yeah. But here's also the thing. People wonder what's wrong with killing an animal who is intended for slaughter. Well, that's food waste for one, because there are so many food. If you eat meat, you should be against terminal surgeries for this reason, because there are so many food animals out there who are languishing and dying and who will be food waste and not become meat because they aren't getting medical treatment. And students should be providing care to those animals, even if they could become meat. But here you're purposefully redirecting animals away from the food supply to train students, and then not even allowing the students to practice post-anesthesia recovery. That is totally food waste. You're not only denying another food animal medicine, you're taking away another animal from the food supply. So really, you're kind of dooming two animals. You're wasting meat from two animals. So even if you're a meat eater, you should be opposed to this because of that.
Agreed. And I will say, allegedly, some of these goats were not healthy, and they are those animals that you're describing. And so those animals could then maybe have received medical treatment. Some of these goats may be in medical treatment because they were coming from a farm where they were being raised for meat. From students that I have talked to who have taken the course, a lot of them are like, yeah, these goats were not in good shape to begin with. And
why though?
Wouldn't have necessarily gone on to live happy lives. I don't know enough about the goat side of it, honestly, because I knew that wasn't what was going to get them to change the lab. The goats, they'll change it because they ultimately decide to do away with terminal labs, not because they have moral consideration for goats.
Yeah. So many people should let us know what's happening with those goats. I would like to know more. What do you mean they didn't look good? And were we paying somebody for those goats? And are we reinforcing potential bad husbandry practices?
Yeah, the school definitely buys them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Planning on ending the horse terminal lab portion of this course. They were not planning on doing so until the end of the semester, despite already knowing that the horses they would be using could be adopted otherwise. Cottingham shared this information.
Oh, I like she's actually sharing, yeah. I'm gonna replay that.
Yeah, replay that.
Hold on, I went back too far. Oh no, did I lose it? Oh. It's too... the scrubbing.
Hate it.
It's too difficult. Okay, that's
Yeah.
too far away.
Oh. I saw a little WSU thing in there.
But I think that was just an advertisement.
Okay. All right.
It's after all this sports ball. Oh, I don't know where it went.
No.
And Madeline Mullins, 4 News Now.
Well, we have
okay, so it must have been right before then.
On live goats and horses, animals that are ultimately euthanized at the end of the course. The school uses animals that would be killed otherwise, but this semester, fourth-year veterinary student Larea Cottingham says she learned that wasn't the case for several horses.
They were not infected with disease, and had they not been part of the terminal lab, that they could have been eligible for adoption under the USDA policy.
In emails Cottingham shared with us, this information was confirmed with the dean of the veterinary school. The dean also mentioning that had they known in time, the class could have been altered and the horses could have been adopted.
It's just a different moral consideration on how to use an animal if they were going to be killed anyway versus they could have gone on to live a life somewhere as someone's pet.
While WSU
Yeah, I
was
don't
planning
agree,
on ending the horse terminal lab portion of this course, they were not planning on doing so until the end of the semester, despite already knowing that the horses they would be using could be adopted otherwise. Cottingham shared this information with the students in the class, and after receiving pushback, she turned to the animal advocacy group Our Honor and wrote a press release that went viral.
I'm really disappointed that some people took the call to action to write letters and call the school, persuading them to change their curriculum. That some of those calls have been threatening and have been harassing.
WSU says it already planned to end this terminal horse lab where they do the procedures by the end of this semester. The university wrote in a statement that it received threats towards members of its community, and for the safety of students, faculty, and staff, it abruptly canceled the horse component of the course. In Pullman, I'm Madeline Mullins, 4 News Now.
Well, we have a front row seat tonight to watch.
Well, I think
paints WSU as being a little sus.
you what? You think
I
that
feel like that news story kind of like makes WSU seem a little sus.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's actually
I think
I knew as soon as I'd said that they were going to take that clip and be like, it's a different moral. What I was saying is I'm imagining for the students, but that's all right. You guys know that I don't think that.
It's always frustrating to be on the news because they're going to clip you out of context. They're always looking for the most viral thing that you're going to say. And I've been a victim of that happening to me too. Like, and they clip the thing that I didn't want them to.
So vegans don't come at me and say that I think it's okay to use animals based on whether we're going to kill them anyway. I am vegan and I don't, that's not what I was saying in that whole, in the whole sentence. So that's an example, Dr. Borgerson, if you're watching.
And I will like
context.
Correct, like some of their inaccuracies. So we wrote that press release. That press release didn't really go viral, and that it wasn't really a thing. That wasn't what inspired people to call and email and everything. It was Beagle Freedom. It was okay. So first the oh my God, I'm blanking on their name. Northwest Animal Rights
Network.
Northwest Animal Rights Network.
And they're not getting any press.
Yeah, and my bad too. I need to email them and thank them because I actually first reached out to my co-authors at PCRM, and I was told, like, have you reached out to Northwest Animal Rights Network? And I'm like, okay, I'll reach out to them. And they did their press release and everything. And then still nothing happened. And then, but our press release did get the attention of Beagle Freedom Project. And I
think what got their attention was because I specifically cited the Washington State Homes for Heroes Act, and they were a part of getting that act passed. And so, I think they would have been interested in this either way, but I think that specifically piqued their interest.
And it was so funny when they reached out because like the night before I was having dinner with somebody who was like, oh, I'm really good friends with Shannon at Beagle Freedom Project. And have you reached out to them? And it was like the stars were aligned for us to collaborate. And then like after that and still like wasn't really, we're like, we have how many days potentially left? We don't know. We got to pull out all the stops. And that's when I personally took it upon myself to get
without asking me, just putting it
without asking me. And I think I got some push.
I've said on the record, I didn't reach out.
Yes.
And they never have talked to me directly. I never reached out to PETA, and I'm not saying I'm not grateful for PETA because it's
No.
because of them
Yeah.
that this blew up. I do think it's also because of PETA. Some of the people that follow them are the ones who wrote these alleged threats and shared violent rhetoric with the school. I also know from being a veterinary student that the vet profession is pretty unaware of most animal rights organizations and the work of most animal advocates, and the only ones that they know are PETA, and they are absolutely terrified of them. And so I had hesitations, not because I don't think PETA does important work and could get the job done, but because the amount of PETA bashing that has happened in my coursework from day one of vet school, just off the hand, also like by professors, by, faculty, when you like ask a question like, oh, so if you're treating an animal in a sanctuary, and then they go off on like a PETA rant, or if you ask questions about like lab animal use and they go off on a PETA rant, I'm just like, the veterinary profession is so sensitized to PETA.
It's like a Pavlovian response. It's weird. It's emotional.
Brains explode, and they're not going to be able to think rationally. And remember that the people who wrote the dean first, I don't know how, like a few hundred veterinarians and vet students sent our letter from our honor. And no one cared. No one wanted to listen to veterinarians who had gone through terminal labs and who had conscientiously objected to terminal labs.
I remember the first note you told me about of like, when it was before we got animal rights groups involved, it was your letter writing campaigns going really well. And that was when it was all vets. It was all vets.
The dean emailed me. The last correspondence I've gotten from the dean was after our honor launched their campaign, and maybe after NARN launched their campaign, because kind of
I think NARN
and I got an email saying your letter writing campaign is working and I'm planning on not responding. And I was like, okay.
And it's not going to change anything.
The best laid plans.
Not. I mean,
so thank you, PETA, for picking this up. But I do want everyone to remember, and I would like PETA to give veterinarians credit that we were the ones that it wasn't animal rights activists that brought.
And they have like.
And I haven't been in any maybe after all of this blows over, we can chat, but it would be awesome for them to have like a public statement of like, we support veterinarians who speak out against these practices and we're here to support you, or basically what our honor does. But it's nice to hear it from other places, because sometimes they veterinarian bash themselves, not PETA, but their members.
Their members, which is their members need to realize PETA hires veterinarians. PETA pays the salaries of veterinarians. So don't be vet bashing.
And I think
not
that's
helpful.
The misconception about PETA is people think it's PETA the organization. I'm like, PETA is a professional organization. They have their own lawyers, they hire lawyers, they have their own vets, they hire veterinarians, like and people always accuse them of going about it the wrong way, and they don't realize that PETA does exactly what I did, which is getting in the rooms where decisions happen. Like PETA owns stock in like companies like Ralph Lauren and companies like that, so that they can say, hey, as a shareholder, I would like to see this company not use animal products in its fashion. And if that's like not the most peaceful, professional way of going about it, like, I don't know, what I keep coming back to is clearly I did this the wrong way in the view of WSU students. I want to know what the right way is, because I worked for a year getting information, being very open. My very first conversation about this, I remember telling a faculty member that I was really concerned about terminal labs and that I wanted to do something about it, and that I was going to go through all the proper means of communication, but that I also wasn't afraid to reach out to my network outside of the school to have this issue be brought to light. And I was supported. They were like, "Cool, you do you." I mean, that was so I don't know what is the right way, if this is the wrong way to do it. And yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know too, but it seems like whenever I ask that question, people don't really have answers. They don't respond. And it seems like that's all my colleagues who are criticizing me, like on my social media. It seems like they spend more time criticizing me than actually helping me do this work. Like, I am doing this all alone. I reach out for feedback, nothing, crickets. And then all of a sudden I get some press attention, or we get
Crystal, you shouldn't
with
have posted the Charlie
yeah.
video. That was bad advocacy.
Then we make something happen, and then people respond to the backlash and the everything. And it's like, you weren't here when we were working on this. Do you want to be here now? And all of the people, there were so many people who were like, well, the horses are still going to be killed. Now you've just denied students learning, and the USDA is going to euthanize them.
And it's just not true. The USDA already agreed to adopt the horses that weren't going to be used in the lab, and someone in the dean's office said that she's going to take the horses to her land. And I'm not going to say where it is because that's her privacy, but it's in a place nearby, and she has a lot of land, and the USDA was 100% okay with that.
Yep.
So I have faith in this animal research station at WSU, that they want to follow the policies. Sometimes they don't know what their own policies are, but they did the right thing and moved it up the chain. And, you know, from correspondence with the dean, they had like national meeting. Like, they asked the big honchos what the policy was, and then they told it to me. That took months. And then finding out if they were infected or not also took months. But, you know, they did slowly do the right thing. So I don't think they're going to kill the horses.
But all those
people, I don't know if we're going to have a say in where they go, but
yeah.
But
all those people who said that they're just going to kill the horses, I asked them, are you going to help us make sure that doesn't happen? Are you going to write the USDA potentially? Crickets after that. Oh, no, you're not willing to be part of the solution. You just want to criticize us for potentially stealing this opportunity from students. Like, please.
And I think the school did rob students of the opportunity this year by not putting in the plans in place to provide them with alternatives like they're planning to do next year. And they had enough forewarning to know this was going to be a big issue.
Like 20 years of forewarning, like back
with I mean, starting
Aaron.
With Aaron. But even just in the last 2 years that I've been here, I don't know. They should have known that I, wasn't going to drop it. And I'm still not going to until I find out for sure that the goats labs are not going to continue next year also.
Yeah. And I hope that there's students on the pipeline who are supportive of us. So I think they will be the next generation to make sure that this sticks, because we've seen it go backwards. We've seen schools that used to not do terminal surgeries are now doing terminal surgeries, because that way the students don't have to provide care for the animals afterwards, which they don't want to do, and which is horrifying. Like, who are you admitting to vet school who doesn't want to care for animals and would rather have them killed instead? That's, yeah.
Yeah. And that's not the norm, but I have heard that sentiment from some students.
Yeah. I remember, like, when I was a young vet student, I'd said some problematic things. Even though I was a vegetarian and everything, I felt like my labor was being abused. I was spending hours hand walking horses when my own 2 horses, which I'm a privileged kid. I had a business during vet school and I was able to have 2 horses in vet school. And my horses were being neglected, and I was paying people to walk my horses while I was hand walking these hospital horses.
Yeah.
And it felt a little frustrating. It was like, I'm wasting valuable time in vet school, which I know other students who do not have horse experience, hand walking patients would have been very valuable to them.
I was just looking at some comments, and I see one comment. I'm a commercial pilot, and the aviation industry uses models and simulations all the time to provide training and check rides, which augments actual flying while minimizing cost and risk. Can you imagine if pilots didn't use simulations and they're like, oops, what if I crash this plane? I have to learn how to, like, not crash this plane. And so I'm going to use a real plane, and oops, I crashed it. Like,
yeah.
I did get another comment saying, because someone had said on my Facebook post that, because I had said human doctors don't, they don't kill their patients in surgery. And they used to kill animals. Yeah. But most of them don't. Even in, like, residency training programs, they don't kill dogs and pigs anymore like they used to. And someone said, human medicine is different than vet med. You can't compare them.
A lot of, so the argument, if I'm going to steel man that argument that the people make about human physicians not killing their patients, they do say that human doctors are required to go through internships and residencies after school. But in this lab, the students, third-year students, were asked to do something that only board certified equine veterinarians do.
Mostly board certified. There is the experienced equine surgeon who isn't necessarily boarded, I guess, who does colic surgery, but mostly boarded or extremely experienced.
Yeah. But I think, who do we care about the most? Like, it's dogs and cats, and we are not killing dogs and cats in student training, and we're not
it's illegal in the state of Washington to do that.
Is it?
Well, I mean, in the Animal Homes for Heroes Act, I mean, I talked about this earlier. It doesn't say no terminal labs, but it says animals used in education and research. The facilities need to make all reasonable attempts to adopt these animals out.
Yeah. So like, people really value their dogs and cats, and the first time many vet students who work on an animal operate on an animal, it's on a client-owned animal or a shelter animal. And that's fine, but for some reason we view, like, doing that on horses is not, when, I don't know, or farmed animals too. Farmed animals are the ones who get the most short end of the stick, especially goats. And there's plenty of goats and cows and pigs out there who need veterinary care, a lot more of them than dogs and cats. And we managed to train veterinarians on dogs and cats without ending their lives in vet schools for the most part. Yeah. So we can do it for these other species too. It's Absolutely. Really interesting how these arguments keep going. And I've spent all day yesterday replying to the comments on WSU's Facebook page. And it was the same things over and over and over again. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go through some of the comments here.
We could, yeah, for a
Um,
little bit. And then speaking of providing good care, my
Yeah.
dogs would love another walk.
Okay. And you've been on a lot longer than I have. So
yeah, no, we
yeah.
can go through some comments though.
Let's
See if there's
see.
anything new on, maybe on this
This
new
is just
post,
spokesman
this new
review.
article.
I had no idea this type of thing went on at WSU vet school. I see online that the rescue organization is reporting that WSU killed all 60 goats for their surgical training. WSU would not comment about the goats in the spokesman article. Yes,
And I talked about that, and when I read through the article of that.
Yeah.
That part's done.
Yep.
They're gone.
One public share. Let's see the WSU vet med. Actually, let's see what else is. Nothing exciting. Euthanasia. I want to see if there's any sort of headlines. I saw somebody. Oh, this person. Like, I don't know who this person is, but they made this really long post. And it's mostly positive. Life-saving alternatives exist, blah, blah, blah. Sally Madigan, shares Beagle Freedom Projects, PETA, Capital Press, PETA. No interesting comments. No PETA hate there. This is the simulation lab WSU does.
Love the simulation lab.
Protest. That's an old one, 2015. All right, let's see if we can find WSU's vet med page. Let's see what they say here. Okay, this is still the top one. I wonder if this is one of the most popular posts they've ever made. 541 comments, 177 shares, 571 reactions. Great work and you got to do all comments, not the most relevant ones here. All comments, see what shows up. So I'm dying to know if all my comments show up here. Aaron's, of course, as a horse owner, I want my vets to have experience with their live animals before they treat, operate on my beloved horse or any other animal for that matter. 66.
But what about any other animal for that matter? Are the animals in those labs not animals?
Yeah, exactly. You
have to do it on some animal, but it doesn't have to be one that no one cares about.
Absolutely. Joyce commented, of course, this statement leaves out important context. The 8 horses in question are healthy and adoptable. The original ethics approval was for horses used in a type of research that would require euthanasia. Post-research, WSU found out that these horses were not used in this type of research, yet still continue to plan on anesthetizing, performing surgery, and then euthanizing these healthy horses. Veterinary training is important, but it doesn't require killing healthy, rehomable animals. People deserve to understand the full picture, and this post does not provide adequate transparency of this situation.
Yeah, thanks, Joyce, for that comment, because that's that's pretty much what we've been saying.
Yep. And then Moni says, I completely agree. Hands-on experience with live animals is essential. The concern isn't about that. It's about how students get that experience. In this case, students only got one surgery, which isn't enough repetition to really build skill. Many of us support training on animals who actually need surgery under supervision, so students get real experience and the animals benefit too.
Yep, and that's exactly the experience that Hannah and I were saying that has been our experience not doing terminal labs is, I think especially you feel this pressure of like, I got to make sure I'm as proficient as everybody else. And so you go out and you end up, at the end of the day, you end up with more experience because you sought it out.
Yep. I just got some breaking news out of Minnesota. Unfortunately, there's a declaw bill that was pending, and it was heard before the Agriculture Committee, and it was a 7-7 tie, and the tie means it's dead, unfortunately.
Dang.
So, yeah. Sorry we didn't advocate more for that bill.
I know.
But we had a lot going on.
We will work on, we need more people to get involved.
need
If you
more
care about
people.
these issues, like please get involved. Please. I mean, clearly a lot of people did get involved. Thank you so
Yes.
much for writing kind, thoughtful, and professional letters. And if your letter didn't fall into one of those categories, please do better in the future.
Yeah. Because it really did harm our advocacy. And it's disappointing that WSU played that up. Like they fueled people who were violent and threatening, because they're like, all the violent and threatening people came onto my Twitter and said, see, it works.
Ugh.
And I'm like, no, do not take credit for this.
No, that's awful.
Yeah, all of the professional letters that were sent, that was enough. And you few people who were threatening and violent and harassing these students and faculty and staff, you ruined our party. You made it all about that and you, instead of about what the right thing to do is. And you really ruined everything for us. So I hope you'll rethink that, because, and this is, there will
we could have
always
done it
be
with just like the amount of, I don't know. I heard somewhere that WSU said they got like 36,000 emails.
PETA said they sent out 36,000.
Yeah, okay.
PETA supporters, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's enough. We didn't need however many of those to be threatening and aggressive. Like just that sheer quantity, that's enough.
And anytime you're threatening or aggressive, you look like the bad guy. And
you bring us all down there with you.
Yeah, it really is not good, not helpful. And I'm upset that I hope nobody actually felt threatened or hurt or anything by any of that. And you shouldn't. The second somebody sends you a death threat, you should absolutely be laughing at it and laughing
call
at them.
the police and share their information and be like, hey, go take care of this legally.
And post it on the internet and get them fired from their job. Like, whatever you gotta do. Like, but don't take it seriously, although I have been threatened too, and that's why I live in a secured compound. And my address is not available online anywhere.
Yeah, I think it's important to take death threats seriously, because even if they're it's like you need to take rabies vaccination very seriously. The likelihood of you being or your animal getting rabies, depending on where you live, is probably pretty low, but the risk is far too high. And so I feel the same way about, like threats like that. It's like probably nothing is going to come out of it, but that person needs to be held accountable for what they said. And the risk of it coming to fruition is way too high to not do something about it. But yeah, again, now we're just talking about them and making it about them instead of about all the veterinarians who voice their concerns.
There's legal action like civil conspiracy and things like that can be pursued when somebody's ganging up on people and cyber bullying. So don't do that. And I was going to say something else, but I forgot what I was going to say about that. It'll come to me, but I'll just read my statement to anybody who says like this is necessary, or like terminal labs are necessary. I 100% agree with you. Veterinarians should have hands-on experience with live animals before they ever operate on your horse. That's actually what many of us are advocating for. Well, I wouldn't say operating on your horse. Like, I think everybody would be fine with a vet student operating on their horse if they were like assisting a surgeon who was doing it. And, maybe you kind of like have people do part of the surgery. Like, this is how I train students. I will like let them start. You can make the first incision. You can cut into the linea. If the second I see like, oh, you haven't studied hard enough, you haven't practiced on non-animal models well enough, I will take the scalpel from you, demonstrate on part of the animal or whatever, so that they see for next time. I'll give them a chance to like try to find the uterus. If they are not able to do it within 5 minutes or so, nope, you're done now. I'm going to find the uterus, give you a chance to tie off one of the ovarian arteries. If again, you're demonstrating that you have not practiced on rubber bands first and you're a little bit fumbling here, I'm going to take your instruments from you and I'm going to be doing that. Let you try the other side after you watched me do it, and then you can tie off the uterine body. But again, if you're not doing it well, I'm taking the instruments from you again.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be. I'm not going to let the animal sit under anesthesia for too long while somebody's fumbling around there. But that's how it's done. You can have students practice parts of a surgery, but the second they demonstrate that, oh, you're not up to par on this, you haven't practiced your skills good enough, then you got to practice off the animal before I'll let you touch the animal again.
I remember reading somewhere that, and I don't know if this is true, but I remember reading somewhere that students who studied music like did well, like were accepted into like human medical school. I don't know. Maybe it's someone just said it because I studied music and they're like, med schools really like musicians who then decide to become doctors. And I don't know if that's true, but I'm a classically trained violinist. And so I think about surgery a lot in the context of the training that it takes
the
to
practice
play. Yeah. And I think one of my really good friends in vet school is also a classically trained musician, and we would be practicing with our instruments. And I sometimes wonder if other students who don't have that kind of background don't realize how much work it takes to
do the simplest thing.
To do the simplest thing and to be competent at something that seems fairly simple, but to do it seamlessly and to have the muscle memory to do it well. And that's why I'm such an advocate for training on models. And because it's just like learning an instrument. And when I'm practicing for a concerto, like for my senior recital, I performed the Tchaikovsky violin concerto. And for anyone who's familiar with classical music, like you'll know that's a fairly complicated piece. When I would go to practice, I wouldn't just play it once and be like, cool, I practiced today. Like I would pick apart like a measure and I would spend like 30 minutes on 1 or 2 bars until that got really good. And then I would do that on the next couple of bars. And, maybe I would play through the section, or every couple of days I'd play through the whole thing just to kind of see where I was and what needed to be honed in on. And that is really what practicing surgery should be. We should be taking these models home, practicing on them, just like we study for exams. Just like we practice for musical instruments. We should be doing it every day as vet students, and not relying on this one surgery to be like, this is my only surgical experience. It's like, no, your surgical training comes from you practicing the motions and being able to, I see all of these like reels on Instagram of, surgeons doing origami and folding things like that type of thing. That gets you proficient. People who are really good at laparoscopic surgery and are using the the video camera and moving the instruments and operating on really, really tiny things. Like, they do mundane, unrelated things with those instruments for hours and hours until they are operating on a person or an animal. And
Yeah.
I see an overwhelming lack of that attitude in vet school. And so I think there is something. Maybe if we had more musicians go into medicine, we would have, like, people would understand that proficiency doesn't come with, you don't practice by performing. Like, you perform once you are competent.
Yes. I couldn't agree with you more. And I've been thinking, how do we gamify surgery so it is something that like people practice more? Like, and there is like studies done, like if you play video games, you're a much better surgeon. But I don't think handling a controller is anything like the skills and muscle you
No,
need
you have
handling
to
surgical
use those
instruments.
instruments.
And I have calluses on certain fingers and certain parts from the fact that I do 30 to 40 surgeries a day. And my hand strength is something like, and I didn't have this when I graduated, and I would like go home after doing 10 surgeries when I was a new grad, because I did work at a spay neuter clinic as my first job. But we do, not very many because I was not fast, and I'm sore, and I could only do it like 3 days a week. And over time you develop hand strength and you develop calluses, so your fingers are no longer sore from the instruments. And the fact that like people aren't sitting in class practicing, like listening to the lecture while also practicing.
And my friend, my roommate, he would sit in
Yeah.
lecture and he would do origami while he was with his instruments. He'd have his
Nice.
forceps and his needle drivers, and he made like hundreds of paper cranes with his instruments. And you know what feedback he gets every time? And he didn't participate in terminal labs either, but every time he goes and does a rotation and they let him do surgery, he tells me, he's like, yeah, they think that I'm like, he's above average in a lot of ways, but especially in his surgical skills. And I'm telling you, I think it's because he made like hundreds of paper cranes with his surgery instruments.
So what my business while I was in vet school was this leather business. I'm sorry, I was, wasn't totally vegan at that point, and we didn't have the good animal-free leather alternatives that we have now. And I was a horse girl and just thought leather was the only thing you could possibly put on your horse. But I'd have these brow bands that I made for bridles and dog collars, and I would bead them, and I'd bead them with surgical instruments. And so that's how I got my practice. And so I'd bead them and I'd sell them on eBay. And there some days I'd make like $800 on stuff that I sold, and it was great. So you shouldn't be like the weirdo sitting there with your instruments while everybody else is, not. But that should be the norm. It shouldn't be like there's things like in school where it's like, I feel like I'm weird because I'm doing this, but I feel like this is what I need to do in order to get better at this, like making little videos of anatomy lab and narrating the parts to myself. And people would say things like about it, but I'm just like, this is what I need to do in order to know what I'm talking about. So yeah, it's why can't we make a better culture? And you look at like there's like the Japanese and the Chinese kids who are just so skilled at so many things, and America's falling behind in many ways because we just don't have that, whatever that is, practice. And I was a musician too.
Dedication to practice. And I think that's one thing maybe that why I relate to medicine so much is my music background, because the words that we use are even the same. It's veterinary practice. We use instruments to perform surgery. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I need to like figure out
Yeah.
how to
You could write an op-ed about this.
talk about it as a musician and why.
Yeah. It's the same with like being a horsey girl. We practice, and it took a lot to get your horse to. I did dressage to gradually over the years get your horse up to level. First year training level, second year first level, third year second level, fourth year third level. Like every year, like it takes years to build a horse up to Grand Prix, and I only trained a horse up to Prix St. George, which is a couple levels below Grand Prix. But it takes so much time to train a horse and to train yourself how to do those tests. So, and I felt like that's what's made me so disciplined. And I feel like a weirdo compared to a lot of people. But I also feel like in the recent years, now I used to play instruments. I don't anymore. I don't ride horses anymore. And my attention span and ability to like focus, and of course social media is the bad thing too, is going away. I don't feel like I'm where I used to be, where I could produce as much stuff, and that's because of I'm not practicing that. Although I'm practicing surgery, and thank God for that. That's the one area of focus and practice that I get to do. But I also kind of right now it's just I'm not necessarily getting better at spay neuter. I don't do like the hard practice. There's like the boring, grueling muddling through of and trying to get yourself to the next level sort of thing that doesn't really exist right now for me in surgery. It's like I'm about as good as you can get for what I do. And now what? Like there's not like that learning that new piece of hard music and how it's just like, oh, so daunting and hard. And then you get like good at it, and it's like muscle memory, and you're like, you can play, and it's magic. But going from like that, this is hard and sounds awful, to this is like easy and I don't even have to think about it, is I don't have that in my life where I get myself from that to that.
Yeah.
So I got to find out what that is.
I do wonder if that's part of, with social media and just like how we get information, if that's kind of changed people's time scale. Cause, I think part of what gets people riled up about these labs is they want to do a really good job. They want to be really good vets, and they feel like I need to be able to do everything the day I graduate. But the truth is, like, even once we graduate, we're going to start with, the basics that we learned in vet school, and it's going to take time to get to a point of being proficient. I'm going to be right where you are, and it's like max 10 surgeries. I think my longest surgery day has been 9 right now. And it's like, there's a long way to go to be able to get to the point where you are. And it's not going to happen. Doing more terminal labs in vet school isn't going to get me to that point. The only thing that's going to get me to that point is time and experience, and one course, even if you are getting to do 6 different procedures once, maybe twice, it's just not the amount of time that's going to get you to feeling extremely competent and confident. Like you're just going to have to practice it over time. And I think maybe people don't realize that about medicine, is you bring your animal to a veterinarian, and this might be the millionth time they've seen this issue. This might be the first time that they see this issue. And what makes vets and doctors capable of dealing with that isn't necessarily the number of times that they have seen that particular case, but the number of times they've like gone through that process, and their ability to work something up, to problem solve, to rely on their foundational skills, and to like extrapolate. because you're just never going to be able to be exposed to every single thing that you're going to see in your career during vet school, even one time, let alone enough times to become an expert.
Yeah. And it goes away, your knowledge too. Like, I don't do a whole lot of medicine anymore. And I remember I used to know a lot, and I used to work in general practice, and I could treat a Cushing's case or diabetes or whatever. Now, like, that causes if the idea that somebody comes in and asks me a question about Cushing's or diabetes, I'm like, I'm not the best person to ask that. I can
Yeah.
look it up, but it's not like off the top of my head a plan like I used to have.
And that's
Or
not, I
DBCs.
got messages from students, saying like, I'm not even large animal focused, and I think this lab is really important. And I'm like, wow, you're willing to participate in ending this animal's life, and you're not even going to be doing these procedures. There's probably a student who really wanted to take the course who is going to be working with these kinds of animals. And B, like, is it really worth it to end their lives if you're never going to do this procedure again? And I think that's
Yeah.
another side of, this whole terminal
It's so
that
weird because I
people
think
don't know about.
like I would think that any graduating vet, having gone through vet school and realized, oh, you get out and a lab in vet school is nothing, hasn't really helped you. And I think there's a lot of vets we've talked to who are like, yeah, now after the fact, I realize those terminal labs didn't help me at all.
And I think
But
there are
then
vets who say that they really did, especially I think first year and second year vets who are a little less removed from the vet school experience. They really are relying on what they learned in vet school. But once you're a few years out, like, you're relying on what you saw last year, not what you saw in vet school.
Yeah, it's but I can't, I don't understand the ones who are years out, older vets who still defend these terminal labs as so necessary. And I remember one producer, I'll call him a livestock veterinarian, farmed animal veterinarian, who is like, he was defending these labs, and I was like, do you have students come with you and do you teach them? And he's like, oh yeah, I do, but they need a base of experience first. Like, if they're going to help me do a C-section or whatever. And I'm like, so are you saying that, like, me as a small animal vet who does surgery all the time, like, I don't have that base of experience that you would find acceptable to come out and assist you with a C-section on a cow or a pig and that
Interesting.
I
A
don't.
little gatekeepy.
Yeah. What magical thing happens in those labs that I'm not aware of? I just don't get it. Anyway, I know you got to go and take care of your animals.
I do. We need to keep hanging out. They're putting up with their mom being a little busy these days, but I mean, they've been on 2 walks already. They just want their 3rd walk.
Oh. Well, we could. If you want to stick around a few more minutes, we could talk about being a whistleblower and what we could warn other students of. Who
I
might
just
be
think
considering.
everyone, if you're in medicine, 100%. If you're not in medicine, just being a citizen of the world and being within society that has power structures, everyone should just read The Occasional Human Sacrifice by Carl Elliott, because I think I would have been really shocked about what's happening had I not read that book. I think I'm emotionally shocked just because there's a lot of social complexity to this situation that I'm feeling emotionally about. But like mentally, I saw this coming and I'm not surprised, and I owe it to, to knowing your story. But then, he opens in this book of, this isn't a book basically to give you hope and inspiration of being a whistleblower, because most whistleblowers lose their jobs, face backlash, and are never remembered for the work that they did. And I think that was really good to know going in. Going in. And I think had I not read that book, I would feel even worse than I do now.
Yeah. It's such an important book to read, because you do think, I am, once everybody knows what I know, they'll all be on board and realize that this needs to change, and we can't be continuing to allow these things to happen. And just to be shocked that no, people don't agree, and they think you are the bad guy. And it's so shocking and frustrating, and it's so isolating. And to this, I still feel that isolation, even though, like, I have you and our little group of vets. There's things happen, and there's people will say horrible things about me in veterinary Facebook groups. And I'm like, I have this sense of, like, just isolation. Like, where are all my friends coming to my defense and pointing out how wrong these people are for saying something like this about their colleague? And nobody's coming to my defense. And no, I saw even on, like, you posted the video, and I haven't come to your defense with that one person who's commented. And I'm like,
it's
I'm
fine.
gonna.
I know him in person. It's not a problem.
I know, but still, like, I regret that I haven't commented yet, because I was going to formulate my perfect comment. But I'm also very angry at, and this is going to get me in trouble with our own friends. I'm like, where are all our friends who aren't also commenting on this? Like,
and it's hard, people are busy, and I don't know. I give people.
What's more important? That's what I think. What's more important than this right now? Like, coming to the defense of one of our colleagues who is doing the thing that we all want the veterinary profession to do. And now we're not even coming to their defense and, like, joining together as a movement of veterinarians and, coming to their support. All of these other people, all of the lab people, they have all of their supporters who, like, vitriolically comment and smear anybody who's voicing concerns about lab animal stuff or farmed animal stuff. But our people, silence. They're all going through so much personal stuff right now, and I don't go on social media. And
well, that's my excuse all the time.
No,
I didn't. I was like, if I just stay off social media, then I don't have to do it. And now I'm on it, so you'll see me in the comments. I'll defend you. As long as well, right now, some of the groups I'm not allowed in because I'm not a vet. But no, it's sad. I mean, I wonder how much fighting on social media really does anything. But and I'm also, I don't really care to defend myself. There's a lot of things that have happened in over the course of this that I could, work to defend myself over more. And I don't know, it just feels like I'm just going to keep showing the evidence. And, I feel like when you defend yourself, people think that you're unwilling to receive feedback.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because you want to be perceived as someone, especially if you are someone who's willing to receive feedback. You want to be perceived that way so that you can continually get feedback to continue to grow and improve. But if you ever say, I just disagree with that feedback, then you're defensive and closed-minded.
Mhm.
So it's probably a weak take, but I
No.
just choose not to defend myself, and I just am like, all
Eh,
right, well, so
and
I'm
it's
just
not about defending yourself, but it's about like, oh, you're basing that on incorrect facts. Let me
yes,
get you the right facts. And I have like a need to get the right facts out there. It's like, oh, here's a comment
yes,
just hanging with incorrect information. Let me give them the right information.
yes,
And that's that's also, you can only do so much.
yeah,
But I feel like this is the moment on WSU's, at least WSU's Facebook post. Let's make sure all comments are responded to with the correct information when people are lacking in information.
yeah,
And I've changed a lot of minds. A lot of people are like, "Oh, thank you for your perspective. This really shines a new light on what's happening." So,
yeah. I
yeah.
think it's important to share information, which is exactly what we're doing here. So thank you
Mhm.
everyone who's tuned in at any point, and if you've watched the whole time, that's a marathon. Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you're a vet student out there and you want to change your lab, you don't have to do it alone, and you don't have to do anything other than leak us information. Whatever, if you just want to have a conversation. And I know I am about to declare phone bankruptcy. I have too many text messages that I haven't responded to, email bankruptcy. If you've reached out to me and I haven't responded to you, it's not because I don't think your case matters. It's just because I am overwhelmed by
Yeah.
text messages and emails and everything. So please keep sending me, bumping me, let me know what's going on. And I want to address your school and your issue, whatever it may be. So please email me, cheath@ourhonor.org. If you have my phone number, you can text me.
Yeah, and you can do the same with me as well. I am now on the socials and trying
Yep.
to check them. So it's Larea.sunshine on Instagram, and my email is larea.cottingham@gmail.com, and just my first dot my last name. So yeah, reach out to me. Find me on Instagram. I'm on the other ones, but if you find Larea.sunshine or Larea Sunshine on any social media, it's probably me because it's a unique name.
Yep.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
I'm Dr. Crystal Heath. Where does Larea come from? I don't think I've
Larea
asked
is
anybody.
it's the genus of the creosote or chaparral plant. So in the Mojave
Oh.
Desert, the like shrub that's everywhere that smells really good when it rains and has yellow flowers,
Oh.
and it's kind of scraggly looking. Its scientific name is Larea tridentata. The botanist will say it's Laria tridentata, but Larea is the way that my parents pronounced it, so that's the way I pronounce my name. And yeah, so it's the beginning of that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll let you go. You
Thank
have
you. Thanks,
a good
everybody.
evening, and please like and share, subscribe, and yeah,
Reach out.
we'll
We're
keep.
here to support you. And yeah, we know there's a lot of people doing good work at their schools, so
Yeah.
we'll amplify it, or we'll just be a sympathetic ear and keep it quiet if that's what you want as well.
Yeah. Whatever you need from us, we are here for you.
Yep. Great.
And
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye. And